Life is precious, and we all have the opportunity of living it to the fullest. Unfortunately, so few of us know how to manage it all. How do we account for our opportunities? How do we account for our time? How do we account for our relationships, health, spirituality, homes, finances, influence, and careers? How do we account for the one life we have to live? I am so glad you asked. In this program, you will find answers to all of these questions and more. Welcome to the Account for Your Life podcast with your host, the healthy accountant himself, Jay Moore.
What's happening? What's going on? Welcome back to another episode of the Account for Life podcast today. We're just going to talk about mistakes. We're going to talk about some of the biggest mistakes, talk about some mistakes I've made. I will make this announcement throughout the podcast so that if someone's watching this, and if you're catching this on the replay, wherever you're watching it or listening to it, and put in the chat what some of your biggest mistakes have been. It could be mistakes in relationships, it could be mistakes in business, especially business, in whatever it is. Just let me know in the chat what one of your biggest mistakes were, because we're going to talk about mistakes. I was having a conversation this morning with my son. He came with me to the gym. He fell off for a couple of weeks because he had a number of things happening, but he's back with me. He's in the gym with me. And so he had asked me, we finished and then we were in the car and he asked me, he says, Dad, can you give me some gas money? And I said, gas money? I was like, he says, well, my account is going low. I was like, well, because he decided that, he realized he was spending too much money. And so he put most of his money into his savings account, but his expense account has gotten low. I was like, that's interesting. I said, now, I had to make him remember. I said, now, at the beginning, I don't tell you how to spend your money. Now I would, because look, if you want to make all the mistakes I've made, have at it. Have fun. Literally, you can go make every mistake I've made and then some. But why would you do that? I said, why would you do that? I said, so I can't make you not make the mistakes. So I said, one of the agreements that we had, I told him that I would pay for his gas. Months, maybe almost a year ago, I would pay for your gas if. Well, what was the if? If you come to me whenever you want to buy something, so that we can talk about it, right? Don't just frivolously spend your money. I said, right now he spends all his money on food and entertainment. Let's think about this. Food and entertainment. Food is free. He gets free food, but he still spent most of his money going to food and entertainment. Food, games, having fun, whatever. I said, now, when I was your age, I think I just spent all my money on clothes. That's what I want. I wanted to look good. Clothes and, maybe it was clothes and entertainment. Food thing, we didn't we didn't eat out as much as we do today. But at any rate, if you've had some big mistakes, I want you to share with me in the chat, maybe one big mistake that you made, that if you could go back and teach yourself or go back and tell somebody, hey man, you definitely want to avoid this. So I'm talking to my son, and so he's asking me for gas money, and I said, look, the thing about all the mistakes I've made is that you don't have to make them. I said, but I can't make you not make them. I said, because inherently, as for some reason, the kids feel like they need to make mistakes. I'm like, that's dumb. Like, because you've been schooled. Check out what school does. School makes people think that they shouldn't that they shouldn't ask for help. That's what school does. School says that, well, if you tell me the answer, then I'm cheating. I said, well, you're not cheating. You literally, I could tell you all the answers and you can win. So we had this conversation, and we had the conversation. We'll see what happens. But I think about the mistakes that I've made. I think about, plethora. I can just go I can just go back to childhood and think about mistakes that I've made when it came to, money. Money is the first thing. I just wanted, maybe it was the environment. And recently I heard one of my coaches kind of talking about things that happen in your early years is a lot of times things happen in your early years that you wind up really having, putting a lot of value on. So for me, we didn't have a lot of money. And there was a lot of emphasis put on not having money. So what do you think? What do you think is going to happen to a person? They're going to then want money. So he says that's typically what happened. He says, that happened to him. They didn't get cars. The parents never bought a new car. They always had these old rinky-dink cars. They always fixed cars. So now he's older. He makes sure that he has really good cars. Now, it's not that it's about, him just having cars. That's something that he didn't have when he was young. So he has really nice cars now. And I thought about it, I said, wow, that's interesting. But we all have a driving force. Something in our past, right, was something that we lacked. So now it's something that we want. I'm saying it again. Something in our past is something that there's something that we lacked. And so now that it's something that we want. But I says, man, so a lot of the mistakes I made had a lot to do with the things that I wanted that I couldn't get. So then when you fast forward, all right, there's all sorts of mistakes. Like, I just remember making, eating mistakes. I'm eating the wrong foods, maybe, it's kind of like now I pretty much cut out most carbs. That's not bad. That's actually, when I've been studying food, and food is one of the most interesting areas to study because there are people who talk about all sides. You've got the side that says you should only eat meat. You got the side that says you should only eat vegetables. You got the side that says that you should eat some of everything. You got the side that says it should be balanced and you should have more carbohydrates. You should have more carbohydrates and less protein and less fat. Then you have the other side that says you should have high fat. You should have high fat, protein, and then less carbs. Who's telling the truth? Who's telling the truth? So I've been studying food. I'm just like, wow. I made a lot of mistakes not studying for myself. Like, that's the first mistake. That's one of my biggest mistakes, not studying for myself. I can just take that a whole lot of places, right? When I think about religion, I think about, being in the religious environment most of my life. A lot of times I'm just taking in and just, oh, that's what they say to believe, so I'll believe it. I had a problem with that because I realized, do I really believe all that stuff? Then I needed to go and study. So that mistake of not studying for myself, not coming up with my own way of thinking. All right, so this is contrary because remember, the school system doesn't want us to think different. Hey guys, if you have had a big mistake, I'm gonna ask this again. If you had a huge mistake, just one, put it in the chat. I'd love to talk to you about that. So I'm talking about one of my biggest mistakes. And here's one of my biggest mistakes. It's the fact that I didn't study for myself. I didn't actually go and look at if someone's telling me something, let me go study it for myself. Some things I can accept as true. Because if it's already on the lines of what I've been studying, I'm saying, oh, you know what? The likelihood of it being true is even higher. If you've made a big mistake, I want you to put that in the chat. Let me know one of your big mistakes. Mine is not studying for myself. So that's one of my big mistakes. But when you study for yourself, here's what happens. I start studying health. So then what happens as I'm studying health, even though there's a lot of people, oh, you got to be vegan. Oh, you got to do, you have to eat this way. Oh, you shouldn't eat this thing. Well, you know what? Let me decide for myself. Let me go and study what's the best for me. And I'm going to tell you, here's the thing. Here's what I'm learning. I haven't really been eating carbs. They said, and I don't miss them. I don't miss any carbs. Why? Because what is a carbohydrate? A carbohydrate, a lot of times, is an empty food. Most of them. So think about bread, empty, totally empty. Let's think about pasta, empty. Let's think about rice, empty. Some of these things are so empty. It's like, well, you can't help but eat a lot of it. Think about rice. If you go and get you some rice, you can't help but eat a lot of rice because rice is light. It feels light. I remember some years ago, man, it's years ago, back when we lived in our first house. It's probably like 2001, 2, 3, something around there. And we were having something at our house. I made a bunch of rice and I messed up the rice. We had a garbage disposal. So I was like, man, yeah, I'm gonna just dump the rice down the garbage disposal. That was one of the worst mistakes I've ever made. I put rice in the garbage disposal. A lot of it. That garbage disposal threw up. That garbage disposal said, peace out. It was like 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night. I had to call a plumber after hours, pay a boatload of money for them to come and unclog my pipe. It was horrible. Rice. But let's think. No, I got to point to this rice story because let's think about it. The garbage disposal couldn't handle it. And it's supposed to be able to grind it up and knead it up. But then we take all this rice and we dump it in. Where's it going? Now, our bodies is wild. Our bodies can do some amazing things. And I'm going to tell you, when it disposes of rice, what does it make it? It turns that rice into something you don't want. It says, oh, you know what? Since we got so much of it, I'm going to make that rice. You didn't know rice was fat. It turns rice into fat. Now, you should study all this stuff for yourself. Lori says, bread, an amazing baguette, empty but derish. Yes, it's empty but derish. I get it. That's why everybody got to do this for themselves. This is me. I love bread too. I'm going to tell you, there's some places I can go get me some bread and I will tear me some bread to pieces. I love me some bread. But here's the thing. What I realized, it was empty. And if just for me, I just needed to let me try something different. So I've been studying that. But that rice, it tore my whole garbage, my pipes up. And I remember when the guy came, he was just like, I mean, he unclogged it, but it was wild. Guys, if you had a huge mistakes, I know in France is amazing. America not. You're right, because America has a lot of the wrong ingredients, which is another whole nother podcast, which we're not going to do that. So if you've had any mistakes, tell me one of your biggest mistakes. I love to talk to you about it real quick. So that's 2 mistakes. So one of the biggest mistake I made was not studying for myself. Second mistake that I made was putting a big mistake. I put rice down the garbage disposal. And then lastly, a pretty big one is that when I was young, I focused on all the wrong things when I was young. And if I had to do this over, this conversation started just because I was talking to my son. If I had to do it all over again, then I would hope that I could find a mentor. I would hope that I could find someone who actually knew where I was going and could then tell me more about it. I would hope that I would have the wherewithal, the thought process to understand, you know what, life is not about what's in the moment. Life is about what's coming, right? So if I'm 15, and I'll go to teenagers because, you know, if you're younger than a teenager, you're probably not going to know much about life. So if you just go to being a teenager, 14, 15, you're getting close to that 18, 19. You're getting close to the time where you're going to be thinking for yourself. And so if there was a way to not do all the stuff the kids do, you know, one of my first sermons, I know I've done some speaking in churches. My first sermons, my mom asked me to come speak at her church. It was for a youth day. I went there, spoke. And one of the things that I said in this talk that I gave that day, was talking about the Good Samaritan. But one of the J-isms that came out of that talk that day was give up your childhood. Everybody, all you guys should give up your childhood, because what you've been told about childhood is wrong. So what you should be thinking, I said, what you can change to, look, you can, I think, and I gave a nice little J-ism, but I can't remember what it was, but it was like, basically, instead of living like a child today, live like a child when you're older, right? So that you can have all the fun that you want when you're 30 and you're 40 and you're 50 and you're 60, as opposed to doing it now. Because most people live their life, live the childhood, they sow their royal oats, they have a good old time, they party, they do everything, and then they get to the point where, oh well, and then they're trying to come back, and for some reason it never comes back. They says, well, I guess that was the good old days. I made that mistake. That's not a mistake I want to relive. So I said that to those kids that day. And it's interesting. Like my sons would say things to me. I said, do you remember what I said? Because they were there. I said, do you remember that sermon that I gave at Grandma Nellie's church? And all you guys were there. What was that thing that I said? And they would always remember. It's like, you give up your childhood. That's what I said. Because what they've told you about childhood is a lie. It's not real. Kids back in the day, what did they do? They worked. They worked when they were young. So there was no kids that didn't learn the family business and work. Oh, but ever since public education, that's changed. So what are my 3 mistakes? 3 mistakes was, basically, I didn't give up my childhood. I put the rice down in the thing. And then I didn't, the first one was, what didn't I do? I didn't avoid the mistake of something, but I'll remember it later. I'm sitting here giving this talk and just kind of remembering while I'm giving it. So whatever mistakes you've made, I guess no one's made any mistakes. You guys are amazing. Like the 3 of you that's watching this, you guys haven't made any mistakes. And I got to make sure I connect with you guys because you can teach me something about life. I need that. So that's it for today, man. Let's talk about some mistakes. I share some stuff with you. Hopefully anything that I've said, don't make those mistakes because it's not worth it. It just brings heartache later. And we don't want that. We just want to live our life to the fullest and account for it so that when we look back, we can say, wow, I did what I was supposed to do in my life. Guys, I appreciate you. I love you. I will see you on the next episode. Peace.
Thanks for joining us, listening friends. We are so glad you invested this time with us. Always remember, you only have one life to live, so live it to the fullest. This has been the Account for Your Life podcast with your host, the healthy accountant himself, Jay Moore. Until next time, make it a great day.